Welcome back, brothers and sisters. I am Braden. This is Langley Outdoors Academy, and thank you for stopping by. All right, guys, we took an L on this one, and probably not for what everyone's going to tell you, because the reason here is significantly larger than just the infringement upon the Second Amendment. The issue at hand here is the Supreme Court, in upholding the bump stock ban, or denying acceptance of the bump stock bans in the SCOTUS, basically just gave the ATF or other executive bureaucracies the green light to misinterpret and retranslate existing laws passed by Congress into laws through the federal rulemaking system. Now, of course, this goes directly in the face of the West Virginia versus EPA decision that came out in June from the exact same Supreme Court. Something's rotten in Denmark. We're going to dive into it. Everything is linked in the description box below if you want to find out more. But we got a lot of things to dive into. I'm going to say a quick word from our sponsor, STI, and then we're going to hit it. And I cannot wait to hear what you guys think in the comments field below. Now, I know a lot of you out there like to repair and modify your own guns. If you're looking for a way to take your hobby to the next level, the Sonoran Desert Institute can help. The online programs at STI cover armor courses, gunsmithing, ballistics, woodworking and finishes, shooting sports management, and more. Plus, all the tools and materials are delivered directly to your door. There's never been a better time to turn a hobby into a career, so what are you waiting for? There's a link in the description box below, and thank you so much to STI that I can bring you this information. All right, my brothers and sisters, make sure you send this out so everyone is in the know, because this is bigger than just your run-of-the-mill infringement upon the Second Amendment. This is significantly larger when you look at it through the scope of the executive interpretations of existing law. This is a big problem. All right, let's dive into this. Like I said, everything's always linked. Supreme Court upholds bump stock ban in a big win for gun safety advocates. Gun rights groups had challenged the federal regulation. Now, I've got 3 different sources linked down there for you guys to get different perspectives, but the mainstream media did a really great job of staying on the exact same talking points, of which we're going to start to refute here in a second. But let's keep going. The U.S. Supreme Court on Monday rejected 2 appeals by gun owners seeking to overturn the federal government's ban on the sale of bump stocks, devices that allow a semi-automatic firearm to shoot more than one shot with a single pull of the trigger. Interestingly enough, and what are the odds that that is the definition of a machine gun, which is not a bump stock? Which gets us to the exact problem. The crux of the problem is the ATF is redesignating and classifying items that are not written into congressionally passed laws. This is executive bureaucracy around interpretation. If you guys have been following this channel for a while, the West Virginia versus EPA case should be ringing some bells right now, because the entire SCOTUS decision, which was released in June, basically laid out that the EPA cannot reclassify existing laws in order to achieve more power and more more bureaucratic power. Yeah, power grab. Let's just say it like that. That's the big problem here. Now, let's just ignore the fact that the media completely did that wrong, but let's keep going. The court did not elaborate on its decision, which is a significant victory for gun safety advocates and government efforts to regulate dangerous weapons. The rejected cases are Afosian versus Garland and Gun Owners of America versus Garland. Now, of course, they got to throw in dangerous weapons. This is an accessory that aids in the reset of the trigger. It does nothing about pulling trigger once and multiple rounds. That is not how that works. But far be it from me to bring out facts when we are arguing from a point of emotion. Let's keep going so I can give you some more background, then we'll talk about what they did. After the Las Vegas situation in 2017, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives revised federal regulations to define bump stocks as machine guns under a 1986 law that bans machine guns. And there is the crux of the problem. They redefined something into existing law. The West Virginia versus EPA case, which the exact same Supreme Court just accepted and just passed judgment on, is now saying the ATF can do this and they don't want to talk about it. That's a bit of a problem for a consistency's sake alone. Not to mention the infringements upon the Second Amendment, not to mention the executive power and bureaucracy overreach. But let's keep going. There's a lot of stuff we got to touch on. Again, there's 3 sources I'm about to cite for you. Several gun rights groups challenged the ban over what they argue was mischaracterization of the devices and argued that the ATF lacked the authority under the National Firearms Act to reclassify bump stocks as machine guns, therein prohibiting their use. In their appeal, the groups did not argue that the bump stock ban would limit the perimeters of the Second Amendment. That's the point. They weren't going after infringing on the Second Amendment. They were going after the bureaucratic overreach of the ATF in redesignating laws to fit their narrative versus what Congress actually passed. This is why it's a big deal. You're going to get into an issue now. Well, hey, bump stock bands were reclassified as machine guns, so that's perfectly fine. Now we can do those special triggers, and we can do, pieces of metal? We can reclassify anything that's outside of their power base. But the SCOTUS just walked this one away and said it stands because bump stock bans now in order. Quote, "This decision sets a horrible and dangerous precedent, one that will allow the ATF to further arbitrarily regulate various firearms. This very same precedent is already being abused by Joe Biden to ban millions of lawfully purchased pistols, even without an act of Congress." Gun Owners of America tweeted in a statement. They're dead on. In fact, today, earlier about 8 hours ago, we covered a video where the ATF was actually overstepping their power in the exact same law, the Gun Control Act of 1968, around receiver bans and reclassifying receivers. The exact same thing. The inconsistencies are rife all over the place, but we got to keep going because this does not bode well for where we're going on this bureaucratic overreach, which is the designed and desired tool of this administration. I digress. Let's keep going. The ban makes possession of a bump stock a felony, subject to up to 10 years in prison and a $250,000 fine. More than 500,000 Americans who previously purchased a bump stock will be required to turn it in or destroy it, gun advocacy groups have said. That's not a good look. Anyway, let's keep going because that's what the consequences are now. Here's my second reference point, and this is important because they hit the same thing. Supreme Court rejects gun rights challenge to bump stocks ban. The Trump administration imposed the ban after the situation in Las Vegas. They did. This is a Trump-era ban. The bump stocks challenge, however, did not deal directly with the scope of the right to bear arms under the Second Amendment, again going after the executive bureaucratic power of the ATF. The challengers instead said the government did not have the authority to ban bump stocks under the NFA, a law enacted in 1934 to regulate machine guns. In 1968, the Gun Control Act expanded the definition of machine gun to include accessories, quote, "for use in converting a weapon into a machine gun," and the ATF concluded when it issued the ban that bump stocks meet that definition. It does not make it into a machine gun. You still have a reset of the trigger. That is all. It is not a machine gun by definition. Again, this goes directly into the auspices of talking about a piece of metal or talking about a trigger that will make something a machine gun when it is clearly not such. Let's continue one more thing. This is important. The groups challenging the ban said the legal definition of machine gun has been distorted beyond recognition and argue that courts should not defer to the federal agency's interpretation. That is Chevron deference. That is something that, again, got smacked around in the West Virginia versus EPA case. If SCOTUS is going to say the EPA can't do this in the West Virginia versus EPA case, why can the ATF do this against bump stock bans, particularly when they're both federal bureaucracies responsible underneath the executive branch of our government? Something is rotten in Denmark, and I cannot wait to hear what you guys think in the comments below. I'll see you on the next one.